Why hello! I'm sorry, I was a bit unwell this last few days, so I couldn't make a video, but I'm back. So, today, second episode of reactions for Arcane Season 1 Episode 2. If this is your first time watching my videos, welcome. Basically, I have watched Arcane already. This is another reaction video. This is just me going over the show and pointing out my thoughts on it. Almost died. Whew. There's nothing to say really, let's just get to the episode. Oh yes, before we get into the episode, I will come back at the end of the video because, well, last video I asked you guys about Patreon and things like that, socials, and I want to go back to it at the end, if I don't forget. That's it. I'm really excited. In this episode we get to see baby Caitlyn.
You really went to the Undercity to get these? Weren't you afraid?
A little danger is worth the risk, don't you think? Careful, that's your parents' money you're dropping.
It's adorable. Beyond the fact that whenever I see young Caitlyn, I want to absolutely kill myself, this scene is very interesting because it tells you basically everything you need to know about Caitlyn in Season 1 and her relationship to Jace as well. First of all, the relationship between Caitlyn and Jace. So we know that they have this big sister, little sister vibe, and we can already see it right now because when she asks, like, weren't you afraid to go to the Undercity alone? She admires him. To her, he's like this big, strong hero that goes to a scary place alone and comes back like unscathed. And in return, Jace is like playing the role of the big brother by saying things that both reassures Caitlyn, like a little danger is worth the risk. It's something like a little tip you would give to, you know, your little sister by saying like, sometimes you have to do scary shit, you know, like life advice older siblings can give to younger siblings. And it's actually a sentence that sticks with Caitlyn because if you look at Caitlyn's character in Season 1, a little danger is worth the risk. That's a sentence that basically sums up whatever she does in Season 1. Like, she goes against every rule because in the end, there could be like this great outcome of peace between Zon and Piltover. And like I said, it's very telling for her character in Season 1. But not just the fact that she admires Jace and that she takes risks to get what she wants. It's also about her knowing absolutely nothing about Zon. And like, you know, there's no like internet or social media or whatever in Piltover and Zon. The only way Caitlyn could know anything about Zon is by either going to said place, which she doesn't do until she's like an adult. The second method would be like school, people around her telling her about the place, and we know that in Piltover they depict Zon as this scary place full of thieves and bad people, and that's the only thing she knows about Zon. And it already settles the idea that Caitlyn is a very sheltered character surrounded by basically Piltover propaganda, and that she knows nothing about the actual world until Vi shows her the true colors of Zon. Last point for this very first scene, like 30 seconds and they already give us so many information, dude. Jace says to Caitlyn, careful, that's your parents' money you're dropping. It already tells us that Caitlyn is from a very rich family and that Jace is not. Because I've seen a few people thinking that Jace was rich as fuck. He's not. That's the whole reason why the Kiermans like pay for his inventions and stuff. I'm yapping too much already, oh my god.
Is someone in there?
Jace, he's dumb as fuck. He hears people in his apartment and he's like, are you robbing me? What do you think, Jace? That was, can we call it the first Vi and Jace collab? Like the flop duo? They were close to each other and shit went wrong. Jace? I didn't remember that. Oh, of course she would be panicked. Like, she sees an explosion and she sees her big brother being like blown off. That's honestly, now that I think about it, That's the first time Jinx blows up Caitlyn. Well, she doesn't blow up Caitlyn in that scene, but there's an explosion right next to her. The first of many explosions, by the way. I find it very funny how Jinx is basically 90% of Caitlyn's trauma. Every explosions, kidnapping, death, it's usually linked to Jinx. It's funny in a way, but also very interesting because they're always like, same to Jinx. Caitlyn is very important for a character. I want to talk about them so bad. So this is Victor, if I understood the last episodes correctly, which doesn't fucking look like Victor. I was actually so convinced that this was Rise when I first saw the episode, because it even makes sense. You see how it's like snow everywhere, then he does some magic thingy, and then teleportation, and then he arrives in some other place, which is basically Rise's ultimate spell. That's what I thought when I first watched the episode, but now we know that it's Victor. That's still mind-blowing to me, how Victor was the one to give Jace the Arcane rune.
Let's go over it again.
You have to believe me, I didn't do this.
I love Grayson.
Be careful with that, please.
I believe someone should have said that earlier. What happened here?
It's amazing to see how the characters changed both physically and mentally throughout the show. Like, looking at Victor right now, he changed so much when you look at him at the end of the show, even physically.
How am I dangerous?
Jace.
Magic?
Yes.
No.
No?
The arcane is dangerous, Jace. A force of nature. Science cannot control it.
That's very important because Heimerdinger is 300 years old, which means that he was there before the founding of Piltover, and that he went through the Rune Wars. That's actually one of the things that I took for granted when watching the show for the first time, because I knew about that in the lore, but then when watching it with my friends, I was like, oh, it's never explained. So I'm gonna try to make a sum up of it with my knowledge. Once again, I'm no expert. So, Runeterra, the world where they live, was created by celestial beings who used artifacts called world runes. And when life forms started to rise in the world, at first it was like spirits, demons, and yordles, which is Heimerdinger's race. Those life forms began to use magic, and then humans came into the world. The problems began when people started using world runes, like they figured out how to use those runes. Like there was this rune war that happened, and it was devastating for every nation across Runeterra. And two mages decided to hide those runes to keep it safe, basically. And that's why I also thought the man we see at first is Rise, because Rise was one of the two mages to hide those runes. So that would have made sense in a way, like Rise is supposed to hide world runes, so he has world runes, and he meets Jace and he entrusts Jace with one of those runes to, like, I don't know, give a second go to magic with humans, I don't know. But it's Victor, so... But yeah, going back to the episode, since Heimerdinger is 300 years old when Arcane takes place, means that he went through the Rune War and he knows how destructive magic can be. And it's something that he says at some point, so that explains his reaction. But when watching the episode, you don't know that. So you tend to side with Jace, who's just trying to do some cool experiments.
I am now 307 years old. All my life I've pursued the mysteries of science.
Yeah. I understand Jace, because it's frustrating when you have this big project, big idea, and you think it's gonna change things for the better. And people are like, no, you won't. I would be like, what the fuck? Why? But it's for the better, Jace. Dude. Once again, a proof that Powder, who's like, I don't know, 4, she's not 4, but she's young as fuck and she does a fucking arcade game on her own. Okay.
You guys know I wouldn't take you on.
I want to discuss about this because I'm actually not sure. Those statues we see in the background of people like half snake, which is basically like Cassiopeia from League of Legends. Obviously it's not Cassiopeia, but it looks like almost like ancient temples. I don't know if it says anything about like remaining civilization in Zone. I don't know. But I think it's a cool detail, and I always wondered about it if anyone knows more than me in League of Legends lore. Yes. Show him. I love how she's already a sharpshooter. I'm so sad they have to be enemies, because I'm convinced Caitlyn and Powder could be like best friends if, well, the entire plot of Arcane did not happen. Timo! That's it, that's Timo.
Hey guys, you should see this.
I hate Marcus, because I know Marcus is the one leading the forces of Enforcers right now. I don't think he's really forcing them, to be honest, but like, that's throwing a human being through a window. Police brutality. How do you look down on a kid that is so obviously terrified of you and think that you're doing something right? Especially knowing that Marcus has a daughter later on in the show. That's something I really... Milo, please. That's something I really like, though. The way the four of them are able to talk to each other without having to use any words. Powder looks at Vi. Vi understands the panic, understands why she's panicked. Vi looks at Clagger. Clagger turns off the lights, and they can escape. This non-verbal communication is actually very important, especially since we continue to see it between Vi and Jinx throughout the show. Well, obviously because Milo and Clagger are dead, but that's beside the point. But I like this sibling connection of them knowing each other so well and trusting each other so well that they don't have to use any words. Dude, and you tell me this guy has a daughter. He just grabbed a child by the hair. Hold me back, I'm gonna throw some punches. Get him of what? They're kids. Dude, every time we see an enforcer, they're doing some police brutality. The only exception it really is Caitlyn, and don't get me started on season 2. We'll get to it later, but for now she's irrelevant for the plot.
Over here!
Echo, have I ever told you how much I love Echo? He was ready to shoot, right? Like, you saw it, I saw it. He was ready to shoot kids. My hatred for Marcus never fades. Knowing that he dies brings me actual joy in life.
The House Pharaohs received your letter. They insist business is steady.
Steady is stagnant, Allura.
That you are the richest person in Piltover.
That's so sexy of her. Like, excuse you, richest person in Piltover?
A house? Remind me.
They're toolmakers. I believe they came to renown for their design of the collapsible pocket wrench.
I'm trying to keep it cool, okay? But I physically need... Knowing we will get more of her in a Noxus show brings me actual so much joy, because I'm not done seeing her on my screen.
This one.
That's a child's toy.
Good.
Just like the first scene we see of Jace and Caitlyn, this scene tells us everything we need to know about Mel. That she is, well, basically a fox. She is intelligent. She knows how to manipulate people in a good way, in at least like a very different way of manipulating people than Ambassa's way of manipulating people, if you know what I mean. Perfect picture of the fox. She has Elora, her trusty advisor, that basically is like her spy or something. Like, she tells her everything she needs to know to be the most informed person in Piltover. She collects informations, she uses those informations to get what she wants. That's Mel. Baby Caitlyn.
Jace had nothing to do with that. He was robbed. We need to help him.
Caitlyn's right. We've known Jace for years.
Every time I see baby Caitlyn, I get the, you know, aggressive affection. Like, whenever I see my cat, I'm like, it's the same with Caitlyn. I just want to squish her. And then again, Cassandra is like, we've known Jace for years, enforcing the fact that Jace and Caitlyn have known each other for a long time, and pushing further the idea of them being like siblings coded. I love them so much. As someone with a sibling that is basically my favorite person on this planet, sibling relationships and dynamics in shows is so fucking dear to me. And I especially love like whenever they depict healthy sibling relationship, because I love Vi and Jinx, okay? But you cannot deny that it's a mess. I still love them. Oh my god, I fucking love them, okay? But Jace and Caitlyn have this I would give everything for her and I look up to him so much vibe. You know, like, I don't know how to say it, but they have such a soft relationship that I love them so much, and I wanted to see more of them in the show, especially in season 2. They don't really interact.
We should hit them back. We've got the numbers to beat them.
Yeah, let's teach them what it means to mess with us!
Sevika. Once again, first appearance, everything you need to know about the character. Sevika wants to fight for Zon. Like, actually fight. What she wants is change things. Which is the reason why she betrays Vander and joins Silco, because Vander does nothing, Silco wants to fight. In probably not the most efficient or ethically correct way, but it's still something.
The Vander I knew, the one who built the underground, wouldn't be afraid to fight.
You know, this sentence makes me think that Sevika has known Silco and Vander for a long time now. And it's not something I really thought about like the many first times I watched the show, but it really struck me in season 2. Sevika knew Jinx and Vi basically all their lives. Like, we talk about how Vander was like a father, how Silco was also probably like a father. But how about Sevika? Because she was loyal to Vander at first, and she was really close to Vander, and she became really close to Silco. And there are interactions between her and Jinx and Vi that I will point out when we get to them. But that suggests that she was important in their childhood, at least. I love Echo so much. He's just a little bean. I love him.
Vander's gotta deal with the enforcers.
What deal?
Echo, your love for tea is what got us into this mess, if I'm being honest. I love him, and I will not blame him for anything, but some secrets are better unsaid.
I'm told it was built only for the sharpest of minds.
And I bought you some ginkgo nuts.
Once again, first impression, everything you need to know about a character. Salo is someone that takes upon opportunities and that tries, without success, to sneak into people's good graces, like he does with Ambessa in season 2.
As Jace's patron of many years, I can speak for his character. I believe that one day he will be a great contributor to our society.
Every day I go onto social media and see like people speaking about Arcane, and I'm like, have we watched the same show? Because people tend to say that the Kermans, especially Cassandra, used Jace to create Hextech. She didn't. If it really was just about using him to create something, she would have stopped right away when he was starting to get a bad name, which she does later, but hold on for a second. We know that she loves Caitlyn more than anything, and that she wants to shelter Caitlyn, and that anything that could potentially hurt Caitlyn is like, no, there's no way. And Jace's experiment almost hurt Caitlyn, could have killed Caitlyn, and yet she gives a second chance to Jace because, first of all, Caitlyn vouches for him, but second of all, she actually likes Jace and she wants him to continue his studies and to continue because she sees potential in him, not in the you could bring me money, but in the you're gonna do great things in the future. And I genuinely believe that Cassandra wants to change things for the better. She is not perfect, that's for sure, but she is the one that, for example, creates the vents into Zon so that people can get rid of the gray. And I'm sure she sees Jace as someone that can bring like new inventions to make the world a better place. She is still a flawed character, but I think that her intentions towards Jace is not just about him bringing money. Otherwise, she would have stopped like right away. And she's even defending him on the council, like she's vouching for him.
Arcane talents are something you're born with. They can't be fabricated.
Has anyone even tried it before?
Knowing that Mel has magical powers makes this scene and her interests towards magic Jace is trying to create even more important, because we know that it's a secret she tries to hide. We don't know when she realized she has this ability of magic, but we know that she feels things better than most people. And we also know that she has a strong reaction to arcane magic. And I think that this moment where Jace starts speaking about magic really speaks to her in maybe a way she doesn't understand, but still she's like, I need to get to the bottom of this.
Let me prove...
Enough! You don't understand what's at stake. I've seen this power in the wrong hands.
So once again, this is probably depicting like the fall of some civilization back in the day with the Rune War. And I find it so interesting how no one gives a shit. Because if someone was like 300 years old and went through many things in history, I would listen to him. Because what do you mean he's like... Magic was the downfall of many civilizations. In what world you're like, yeah, no, I'm gonna do things different? What makes you so special?
Piltover was founded to escape the warmongering of mages, not cultivated.
That also is something I'd like people to tell me about if you know more than me. I thought that was the plot of Demacia, to be honest. In my head, Demacia was built to protect people from magic. I don't know.
The ethos is clear. He must be banished from Piltover.
See? Her reaction is like, wait, what the fuck? She cares about Jace. And I'm sure that since Caitlyn and Jace have such a strong relationship, she came to see him as like a son, I don't know, not maybe a son, but like someone, a really close friend. Like someone she accepts as family, just like Caitlyn sees him as a big brother. She sees him as a part of the family in a way. I understand why people want Cassandra to be like this big evil lady, just like any other council members, but it's very unfair to say that she doesn't care about Jace. She does.
A crime like this can't be overlooked. The boy must be punished.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why Salo dies. I just know that Jace was like, I don't like you, and when he had an actual reason for killing Salo, he was like, you know what, fuck yeah.
I move that Jace be summarily expelled from the academy. All those in favor?
Once again, Cassandra agreeing with Heimerdinger is like the best punishment in a way. I understand how it's supposed to be better, but at the same time, I know that Jace views this as worse than death. That's his like entire life, his dream taken away from him, and he's just like left with absolutely nothing. I would just be like, huh, well, I guess I'll die. And well, that's also what he tells himself because he tries to jump off, but we'll get to that later.
But he is never to set foot on academy grounds again.
I feel bad for Jace. I love that. Do I love him? Do I hate him? I like him. He infuriates me because he takes very bad decisions. But I love him as a character and I know that he's a good person. That, however, is probably the worst character in the show. Fuck you, Marcus. Fuck you.
The ones running circles round Piltover's finest.
Piltover's finest. The way I actually giggled when I watched this episode for the first time, I was like, Piltover's finest.
No. Magic is far too dangerous in the wrong.
Should have listened to Heimerdinger, I swear. I understand. Honestly, I'm torn because you cannot just overlook someone being like, I went through 300 years of history and I know that this shit could be the downfall of society. But at the same time, I would be so intrigued by this. And I would be like, okay, but just for knowledge, just for science, can we see how it works? I would be the problem as well.
Power doesn't come to those who are born strongest or fastest. It comes to those who will do anything.
Once again, this is also a nice parallel with Jinx, because Vi has much more raw power, just like Vander, but Jinx is the one that goes through whatever it takes to be most powerful, just like Silco. Once again, I love the parallel between Silco and Vander and Vi and Jinx, but like I said in my reactions to episode 1, this is Silco experimenting on a kid. I know he's going through his emo era, but when I see people being like he was the savior for Zon, no. And you can actually see this change in the alternative reality. When Silco stops being emo in the alternative reality, suddenly things are great, or at least better. But since he actively, I'm sorry, but he only brings bad things in Zon. He brings Shimmer, he brings internal war, the Cambarans. That's all him. He creates war among Zon. That's why I have a lot of issue with Silco. But I still love him as a character. He's very interesting, a very cool character. But you cannot convince me that he was in the right for anything. At least at first. Because he becomes like better, I guess, when he has like Powder as a daughter, or like Jinx. Oh.
They won't see you. Your name's no good now.
I love and hate that scene. I have so many things to say about it. We're gonna go through it. But first of all, the idea of Caitlyn sitting in the rain, waiting for Jace. I've seen someone on Twitter post this, and it's something I reposted because when I read it, I wanted to kill myself. Because what do you mean? That is the saddest thing I've ever read. And like, I know I just can't watch this episode without thinking about this tweet, like ever.
My dad says you're a misfit. And that we can't be friends anymore.
This is very important as well, because I'm still convinced Cassandra liked Jace, okay? That's the father being like, you won't hang out with him anymore, Caitlyn, like you're forbidden. I mean, Cassandra lets it happen, so still. But it shows us how appearances and reputation is like the most important thing in Piltover. And that also plays for another scene of Caitlyn we're gonna see later.
So why are you out here?
I'm a misfit too, I suppose.
I'm sorry, I just love them so much. And once again, this whole idea of reputation being the most important thing in Piltover, and Caitlyn being like, fuck no, you're my friend. And like I said in episode 1, Caitlyn doesn't fit in Piltover. She's, well, literally a misfit.
What will you do?
Join the Talus Hammer business, I guess?
You can't do that.
No, I can't.
We know that right now Jace thinks of two things. One, suicide, which he's gonna try later. Second is joining the hammer business. That's his only way of living. And I think that the reason why he went to the Kiermans, and more importantly, I think it was about Caitlyn, he wanted someone to tell him, oh yeah, you can totally be a part of the hammer business, like your family. That works for you, like someone to convince him that it was a good thing for him. And Caitlyn being like, you can't do that. You can't join the hammer business. That's not something that fits you. I think it breaks him a bit more. He knows that's not something he's meant to do. but he doesn't see another alternative. Baby.
I'm sorry.
I have a theory about this scene. Nothing is sure, it's how I view it. We know that Caitlyn has a thing to read what happens on a scene, a crime scene. Like we can see it in season 1 and in season 2. She has this detective vibe going on and she's crazy good at it. I believe that in this scene she knows that Jace is at his lowest point and that he is thinking about doing something stupid. And the way she looks at him when she leaves, to me, I read it as don't do that. Caitlyn sucks at expressing emotions, and I believe that she just couldn't word the idea of don't leave me. So she just looks at Jace as maybe a final look. I don't really know how to explain it, but there's so much thing going on in that look for me. And it would also go back to at the end of season 2. That's not what she says, but she basically asks Vi if she's gonna commit suicide, basically. Like by saying, are you still in this fight? Because once again, she doesn't really express emotions except around Vi. And that maybe with Vi, she learned how to actually put words on her emotions and especially her need of having people around. At the end of season 2, she just lost Jace, which is basically a huge part of her family. She lost Jace, she lost her mother, and she doesn't want to lose anyone else. So it's pushing her even more to just ask Vi not to commit suicide. That's something I think whenever I see this scene. So second point is I find it absolutely crushing how before committing suicide, like the last person Jace goes to see is Caitlyn. I'm unwell, I love them so much.
With all due respect, Counselor, don't you think we've pushed them hard enough?
Once again, I genuinely like Grayson because she is in a position of power, yes, but she cannot do shit without the council. And this is basically her being like, maybe just, go chill. Grayson is far from perfect, that's for sure, but she's like way better than whatever Marcus had going on.
What can I get you?
4 sump rats will do.
I wonder what would have happened if they had actually arrested the 4 of them, because don't tell me they would have executed them or put them all in prison, because you may think oh, obviously it's same with Vi, everyone in prison. No, the only reason why Vi was in prison is because Marcus put her there without really anyone's opinion on it. Would they have done this for the 4 of them? You can see it with Milo's face, but you can only understand the hatred they have for the enforcers, because whenever they come down, it's terrifying. It's always violence and it's always a traumatizing experience. Fuck, I miss Vander. I really love how he really was the leader of the underground, just one punch on the counter and everyone's ready to fight. Silco, again, you piss me off so bad, because if they had just talked, we could have had the reality from season 2, episode 7, and it pisses me off so bad.
You think you're standing up for something? But we all know there is a crime behind every coin that passes through this place.
The audacity, that is so funny to me, because every coin he will receive after this is blood money, literally blood money. He becomes the sheriff by killing Grayson, so his legal money is based on the murder of Grayson, so blood money, and him working with Silco is also just blood money because he does illegal shit. So the audacity of this, holy shit.
You're just a small man in a little hole the world forgot to bury.
Small man? He's twice your size.
And I'm gonna bury the lot of you.
He's basically saying to Vander that Vander is weak. And I don't know, to me there's nothing more telling about someone's lack of power, actual power, than someone trying to show brute strength, like violence, you know, like he just uses his weapon to break the glass and burn the counter and just make a threat to the others in the room, trying to make himself look taller, bigger, more threatening. But it's just, you're just showing everyone that you're a weak ass bitch, that's all.
I grew up knowing I'm less than them. I want Powder to have more than that, and I'm willing to fight for it.
So many things. First of all, once again, Vi is just like Vander. Like, Vander's mission is to make a better place for the children of Zaun, and Vi's self-assigned mission is making a better future in Zaun for Powder. Second of all, the way she's like, I grew up thinking I'm less than them. Once again, it's one of the reasons I love season 1, because there's actual big issues with society, and I really wanted Arcane to be about societies working together, like how to build a better society. Not something about fucking magic and brainwashing everyone, which was still cool, I get it. But I don't know, either give more time to focus on this society, make another season or whatever. But I would have loved to see more of this problem, because in season 2 the problem became magic, not the society. It's a bit disappointing.
I led us across this bridge, thinking things could change. If I hadn't, your parents would still be alive.
Okay, so that's basically what we see in episode 1, and like many of you said in the comments, Vander went on the bridge with Silco and Vi and Jinx's parents to basically try to get more power for Zaun and, you know, try to make like a riot, something, which turned out bad. It's I mean, it's still a good thing, like, especially as a French person, I cannot tell you that rioting is a bad thing. It turned out bad, and it, I guess, was a bad idea, but you cannot change anything if you don't try anything either. That's also the issue Civica has with Vander and why she betrays him. It's like, you cannot change anything by just being inactive and just waiting for a change to happen. Like, yes, the riot turned out bad and killed a lot of people and probably did more damage than good, but they tried.
I know you want to hurt the Topsiders for what they've done to us, but who are you willing to lose? Milo? Player? Powder?
How about the three of them? I think this conversation was much needed, because Vi doesn't go against Topside. If anything, she works with Topside. Like, for the next few episodes, she tries to follow the plan of Grayson and surrender, and then ends up in prison. And when she comes out of prison, she works with Caitlyn and continues to work with Caitlyn. So this conversation is really interesting because she wants to hurt Topside, but it's more than just about revenge. And after this conversation with Vander, clearing things up in her mind, she sees that you get absolutely nowhere with vengeance and hurting other people in return, and that she understands that working with Topside is actually a much more effective plan than just trying to destroy Topside.
Nobody wins in war, Vi.
Real, fucking real, louder. Ah, I love them!
I'll figure it out.
That's something actually you can see with Vi, that she looks at people a lot and that she is very observant. And when Vander says, I'll figure something out, she looks at him like trying to decipher whatever he's talking about. Like, what do you mean you're going to figure it out? What are you going to do? And that's what pushes her to make the decision of surrendering herself, because she wants to protect her family and she doesn't want Vander to do something stupid to protect all of them. So she's like, yeah, fuck it, I'm just gonna sacrifice myself because that's just Vi. Ah, jeez, don't do it. Please, he's crying, I'm gonna kill myself, just like him. Why am I getting anxious? I know what's gonna happen. You know, that's...
Am I interrupting?
First of all, thank you, Victor. Second of all, I don't think I've seen many shows with a lot of suicidal thoughts representation. It's a weird representation, but it's still needed. I guess at least it shows like a diversity of thought process and how people deal with issues in life. Like between Jace, Jinx, Victor, Vi in a way, because Vi tries to do some nasty shit as well. Not trying to actively kill herself, but like she just wouldn't mind dying, and she puts herself in like situations where she's basically sure that she's gonna die and she doesn't give a single shit. So I think it's really interesting how they just put it in the show, and it makes sense. It's not just like giving characters suicidal ideas just to shock the audience, you know how they do it usually in movies and series. They're just like, oh, this character is going to commit suicide, have fun. That actually makes sense because Jace sees no other alternative to his life than just stopping everything. So I like this character development, and I like also the fact that he's at rock bottom and then he just only goes up.
I saw with my own eyes what magic can do, the lives it can save. You've no idea how beautiful it is.
Well, he will. That's also a very funny parallel, because at the end of season 2, it's like Victor trying to convince Jace that his work with magic is beautiful. And Jace is like, what the fuck? And again, I think it's insanely sad how Jace wanted to create Hextech for good, to create nice things with it. And seeing how it developed. Anyways, my poor boy.
When you're going to change the world, don't ask for permission.
I love Jace and Victor. I'm torn when it comes to their relationship. If you've watched my reaction to season 2 act 3, I joke about how they're gay for each other because they have genuine romantic vibes going on, I think, because the tropes they use in the last episodes are very like tropes you usually find for couples in shows. But beyond that, I see them more as like strong friends. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe strong platonic love, you know? I understand why people ship them. But like, ship whoever you want. Like, as someone who likes every fan art of Mel and Civica, ship whatever you want. But I also understand like people saying we need more representation of two men being friends with each other. And it's something that is, in my opinion, beautifully done when it comes to Jace and Victor. Even though sometimes they have romantic undertones, so I don't mind them as a ship, as a romantic ship, but I personally see them more as not friends. I don't think friends is a good term for them either. To me, they really are like platonic soulmates, if that makes sense. I believe that their relationship is very beautiful, and whether it's romantic or platonic, I love it. Once again, how the fuck can people think Vi is a bad sister? Because everything she does is for Powder. She doesn't want Powder to grow up in a circle of violence. So she's like, I'm gonna sacrifice myself, surrender, and then everything will go back to normal. And she doesn't give a shit about her own life. She only cares about Powder. I'm sick, I'm just...
Do you have any idea what you've done?
I was getting results.
There is no stopping what happens now.
Grayson was right, because if Vi hadn't surrendered that night, or like sent the message to Grayson, there would have been like an actual war going on between the lanes and Piltover, just because Marcus attacked the last drop. This is where everything goes wrong. I don't want to continue. Why am I watching this again? Oh yes, because I'm sick. He knows Vi is going to do some fucked up shit, and he knows that just by looking at Powder, because Powder noticed something is going on with Vi, and she doesn't know and she doesn't understand, and she's troubled by it. And the way she's acting is very telling to Vander, because Vander looks at Powder and he's like, she's troubled about something, and she's troubled about Vi. What did Vi do? Well, Vi is about to sacrifice herself. Yeah, the rabbit. And he puts the pieces together. Powder is troubled, she has Vi's rabbit, something fucked up is going on with Vi. That's where they stop it. They were so evil for this, because what do you mean that was the cliffhanger? I really like Act 1 of Season 1, because it really settles the basis for everyone's character and everyone's reasons for acting the way they do throughout the show. Every time we see a character, it's like to show what's most important about them. Like when we see Sevika, what's most important about her is that she wants to fight for Zahn. When we see Vander, what's most important about him is that he wants to defend his kids. When we see Vi, the most important thing is that she wants to protect Powder, and everything she does is about Powder. When we see Heimerdinger, what's most important about him is his ability to just stay in complete inaction, and that's actually very important for his character, because that's something he goes throughout the show. Like at first he's like inactive, which leads to him being expelled from the council, which leads to him trying to actually act. When we see Caitlyn, the most important thing about her is that she knows nothing about Zahn, and that she's this sheltered girl that still doesn't fit in Piltover. You can find this pattern for basically every character. Usually at the beginning of a show or like a movie, you have exposition. That's something that is very important in order to understand what's going on later. And the first act of Arcane is exposition in a way, but more about how to understand the characters. And it really shows how Arcane is a show about human interactions more than anything. It's about characters, how to understand characters, how complex those characters are. And that's what I love about Arcane, oh my god. And this is why I'm gonna have an absolute blast when doing the deep dives of the characters, because there are so many things to say. But anyways, that was it for my reactions to Season 1, Episode 2. Right, before I go, I said this at the beginning of the video. Last video, I talked to you guys about my socials, so like TikTok, Instagram, well, YouTube. I said I had like nothing posted on Instagram, which was true, but not anymore, because TikTok is getting banned in the US, and someone on TikTok asked me if I would continue to post things on Instagram instead. And I was like, what the hell, sure. So yeah, at first my Instagram was a way for you guys to just slide into my DMs and talk to me, which a few of you did, and it was so nice. Like, I talked to many people, that was cool. Second of all, last video I also asked you guys about Patreon, because it was mentioned in my comments how people would be interested in the Patreon, but I didn't know what to bring. So I've asked last video what you wanted to see in said Patreon, and people have mentioned a few things. I actually took notes. First thing that was mentioned was like playing League of Legends with the people on Patreon, and I mean, that would be fun. I love playing video games in general, and League is probably the game I play the most. I don't know what that says about me, but so I think it would be fun to have like a Discord server. I don't know how to create a Discord server, but I will like look into it. But like have a Discord server with basically like people on Patreon, so that we can all play together and discuss with one another. That could be fun. Second thing that was mentioned was the uncut versions of my videos. Now, I understand what you mean. Yes, you're right. When I watch an episode, I talk a lot and it's very long, and I tend to cut a few things. But also, a lot of what I cut from the video is basically me stuttering, or like mispronouncing words, or just trying to find my words, because like it said under every of my videos, I am not English, which means that beyond me having an accent, I tend to stutter, to mispronounce things. Clagger, turn off the lights so that they can... Oh putain, je vais y arriver. So it means that oftentimes I have to like redo sentences, and that's a significant part of what I cut from the original video. And as someone that has to go through all of this when doing the editing, I can tell you it's annoying as fuck. So I could share on Patreon a less cut, less edited version. So you would have like everything I want to say about the episode, but without me like stuttering, or like those big moments of me not talking and just looking into the void, trying to find my words. So yeah, so far those are the main two ideas for Patreon, like a Discord server where I can play video games with the people on Patreon, and the videos, like the less cut, less edited videos released early as well for the people on Patreon, so like longer videos, if you're interested by it, obviously. So yeah, if you're interested, this is basically what you will get on Patreon. When you watch this video, I have created a Patreon. However, I strongly suggest that you wait a bit before actually subscribing to anything, because, well, so far it's gonna be empty as fuck. Like the less cut version of this video you're watching right now is gonna be the first video on Patreon. I will obviously put a like very low price, like €2, because I'm still a tiny creator, like, you know. So yeah, if you want to join the Patreon, wait a bit, and it gives me time to create a Discord server, and yeah, that's basically it. If you have any other idea of what I could add to my Patreon, feel free to suggest anything. So yeah, TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, it's there. Do whatever you want with it. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. So yeah, see you next time. Thanks for watching, and bye.